Hey, everybody. Welcome to Navel Gazing, the Valley Indy podcast. My name is Eugene Driscoll of valleyindy.org. This is a very special episode of Navel Gazing, the Valley Indy podcast. First of all, if you're watching this on valleyindy.org, we got video. We're zooming it up. We're running with all the trends and doing a video for this one. Election Day is November 3rd. I hope you realize that. And in this episode, I'm going to be talking to some political insiders, asking them to share their insights and to spill their guts about the Valley's upcoming contests. Before I introduce the panel, I just want to take a minute to read a very important message, especially in light of COVID-19 and the economic impact it's having on our communities, from our sponsor, valleygivesback.org. While giving back is always in season, now is a great time to plan your gift. Name a Valley nonprofit in your estate plan and create a legacy that tells future generations what mattered to you. With a planned gift, you have the power to impact the Valley forever without affecting your current lifestyle. Your action will inspire others to make a difference in their own way. Remember the Valley. Ask your accountant, financial planner, or attorney about planned giving options. Plan now, give later, impact tomorrow. Learn more at valleygivesback.org. All right, let's meet the panel, and I got to remember to breathe. My first panelist is a 2009 graduate of Seymour High School and a 2004 graduate of the University of Connecticut, where he majored in political science and history. He served 4 years as a selectman on the Seymour Board of Selectmen, and he is the chairman of the Seymour Democratic Town Committee. Please welcome Stefan Bohuniak back to the podcast. Hello, Stefan.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Eugene, for having me back. It's a pleasure, as always, to be here.
Same here. Second panelist is an Ansonia native who is the proud mom of an 8-year-old daughter who attends Ansonia Public Schools. She's a graduate of the American University's Master of Public Administration and Public Policy program. She is the former chairwoman of the Ansonia Town Democratic Committee and was a candidate for alderman last year in the 3rd Ward. She's on the advisory board of the Valley Community Foundation. She's on the board of the Greater New Haven Opportunity Industrialization Center, Incorporated, and she's a member of the Connecticut Hispanic Democratic Caucus. Please welcome, making her first appearance on Navel Gazing, Leslie Navarrete.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you all.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for inviting me.
Our next panelist, I've known for a while now as the Derby reporter and living here in Derby. She's been on the Derby Republican Town Committee since 2001. She's been on the Derby Board of Apportionment and Taxation for more than a decade. She's currently the board's chairwoman. She ran several political campaigns for former Derby Mayor Anthony Stefan, and she served as treasurer for several statewide campaigns, including those of Themis Claridis and Dan DeBarba. She's a mother to 3, grandmother to 4, and she owns Snagglefoot Dog Walks and Pet Care in Derby. She's a retired computer programmer and teacher, and she is the widow of the great Judy Szewczyk, a truly unique Derby public servant. Please welcome back one of the first guests to ever appear on Navel Gazing, the Valley Indy podcast, yet I still mispronounce her last name, Judy Szewczyk.
Thank you, Eugene. You did perfect.
All right, there I go. I got an attaboy from Judy. Our fourth panelist is a West Hartford native. He's the Associate Professor of Political Science and Urban Affairs at Southern Connecticut State University in New Haven. He was the chairman of the New Haven Republicans, Republican State Party Committee member, and a New Haven City Plan Commissioner. He is a frequent contributor to WNPR and CT News Junkie. Hello, Christine Stewart. His academic research and publications have centered on state and local politics, gentrification, economic development, as well as identity and coalition politics. He's published 2 political books, and he served as political director for Seymour First Selectman Kurt Miller's state comptroller run in 2018. Welcome to Navel Gazing, Dr. Jonathan Wharton.
Thanks so much, and thank you, panelists. I'm excited to talk about Valley politics tonight.
Yeah, actually, that's it. We're done. After those intros and that ad, I got nothing else. But no, that's a bad dad joke. All right, let's talk first about Logan versus Cabrera. A race that affects Ansonia, Derby, a bunch of other places. I want to talk about this race. It's happening in the 17th State Senate District. Again, the incumbent is State Senator George Logan, a Republican. Challenger, George Cabrera, a Democrat. It's a rematch from 2018, which Logan won by 77 votes. In this district, as I mentioned, it's Hamden, Woodbridge, because I get in trouble on Twitter if I just mention the Valley towns. So let me just do this in advance. Hamden, Woodbridge, Naugatuck, Derby, Ansonia, Bethany, and Beacon Falls. Now, let me build up to the question here. I was in the room 2 years ago with Senator Logan on Main Street in Ansonia when the results from that last race with Cabrera started coming in on election night. And he said he was surprised at how close it was. He said to his brother, okay, I was eavesdropping. This wasn't like an on the record thing, but he blamed it on anti-Trump sentiment that he felt was taking away votes. People were angry at President Trump at the time, according to what was said in the room. But then again, Trump in 2016 won 61% of the vote here in the lower Naugatuck Valley. So my question is, this time around, Trump is on the ballot. Does Trump hurt or help Senator Logan's chances at re-election? Let's start with Judy.
I don't think it affects. I think Trump is now his own phenomena. I don't think he's that closely related to Republicans. I think the new groups are for Trump, against Trump, radical, not radical. There's new groupings. So I don't think just because you're a Republican that being on the ballot with Trump necessarily hurts you or not. It's your stance on other issues, I think. If you're pro-Trump, and people know that, the people who don't like him, it's not going to help them much, and vice versa. So I don't see him as a big, as far as being Republican, not as far as running and what you believe in and what group you align yourself with. Yes, that does make a big difference. But I don't think that's strictly down Republican lines anymore. There's too many Republicans that don't like Trump.
Stefan Bohuniak, would you want to weigh in on this?
Sure. Yeah, that's not my district necessarily, but I do follow it extremely closely. I would disagree with the sentiment that Trump isn't going to affect any of these races. I think he's going to affect these races massively, just from the standpoint of there's going to be a lot of first-time or infrequent voters this year, and they're voting either for or against Trump primarily, and they're going to align with the people up and down the line on either party. And every Republican in the state has had a chance to kind of separate themselves from Trump, but they haven't, because they understand, even if they don't like him, that it's politically expedient to stay aligned with him, at least to the public.
And Jonathan Wharton, I know you're not ingrained in the Valley politics to the extent of some of our other panelists, but what impact do you think President Trump will have, good or bad, down ballot?
Well, there's any district I know pretty well is this one. So you're giving me an easy pitch on this one for a couple of reasons. One, I know George Logan personally. He is a very well-known brand in Hamden, and he has brought out a lot of turnout in the Valley. There's no doubt about that. The concern that I might have with him, and I think most people do, is the Hamden turnout. Can that Hamden turnout be so significant that it could cause problems? Don't forget, he only won by 70-something votes the last time. And like you, Eugene, he was in touch with me almost every hour that night when the results happened, and it was scary. We were all concerned. As a matter of fact, Frank Lador is a colleague of mine who I think you all know is the Hamden RTC chairman, and he works over Southern with me. We had drinks last week discussing this. This is a concern. And so the Valley turnout's got to be significant enough to balance out that Hamden turnout. Going back to Stefan's point, it's very true. You're going to have people who don't know who they're going to vote for. That's a given in any election. And the indications are that could really be the case among young voters. Although I have to say, now that we know Quinnipiac, the numbers aren't quite there. Maybe it could work out towards his favor. But I wonder this in terms of turnout, especially Hamden versus the Valley. It's a very quirky district with all the towns that are there. But one thing I'll give credit to George is two things. One, he's incumbent. I'll give him that, benefit of the doubt, because usually incumbents tend to win. And two, he's an old brand. People do know and respect him. I mean, yeah, he's not the Trump guy that everything said one should be, and he's not that kind of person. Going back to Judy's main point, I think that makes him stand out. And so, somebody who is bilingual and who's Black, I mean, you don't see that every day, especially, coming to represent the Valley. And so don't ignore him. Matter of fact, the rumors are, and I think you all know this, is that he could potentially think about something more statewide in a couple of years. So who knows what the potential could be if he could be a candidate for lieutenant governor, for example, down the road.
Oh, that's interesting.
There you go.
Let, let me throw it to Leslie, who is very involved in Ansonia politics. Leslie, what's your take? And the question I had asked was, Trump's on the ballot. Is that going to help or hurt Senator Logan's chances at re-election?
I think I definitely agree with everyone's point, particularly what Professor Wharton said with regards to, we can go by 2 years ago how Trump flipped a lot of seats in the state, and winning by 77 points votes is not a lot. And now with what is going on with the national really impacting local and state politics, especially how the pandemic has been handled. The Valley is the working class that has been greatly affected by it, and the lack of leadership that we're seeing from Logan on issues that affect working class. And honestly, Cabrera, I think, picked up his game with how he is campaigning. He is giving people realistic, good policy proposals and really hammering the holes that Logan has been absent. So right now, I think the lack of leadership that is trending everywhere nationally because of the division that Trump is ensuing, and what's going on in the Valley, I think he is in trouble. I think that he needs to really give us a good reason why he should be up there now. I think people are really looking for a public servant and how you're going to serve us. Because politics is really impacting the daily lives of families here, especially in Ansonia and in the Valley. And
then before we move on there, Judy, you went first. You had the cold open there. Is there anything you wanted to add after hearing the other panelists talk about?
No, I mean, I agree with all the other panelists, some more or less, but yeah, and I wasn't saying he won't affect. My only point was I don't think he affects, because I don't even think he affects just the GOP. I think he affects everyone on the ballot. He brings out new people who haven't been there before, lots of things, but I don't think people stand in there, even a new voter, and go, let's see, did that guy like Trump or not? No, they're in there because of Trump possibly, but they're going to vote on their candidates, on what the candidates are about, not just if they're like Trump or he's on the ballot.
Or just go all Democrat.
I don't think people do that so much anymore. No, some do, but.
And then in terms of the Logan Cabrera race, and Jonathan sort of answered this question to some extent, which is why, look, you're anticipating my questions and answering them before I ask. But again, we're talking about these towns: Hamden, Woodbridge, Naugatuck, and then, dear Derby, Ansonia, Bethany, and Beacon Falls. On that national level, we hear about battleground states all the time. So what are the battleground towns or cities that are up for grabs in this district? I mean, Jonathan, you pretty much said Hamden is hugely important.
It is, because they turn out. And they did, even in that race a while back. It even floored George Logan. And it floored a lot of people, even Republicans. I don't think they expected that kind of turnout. So going back to Judy's point, I wonder how much that turnout will be reliant upon party allegiance or relying upon concerns around Trump. I think a little bit of both, going back to Stefan's point. I think it's going to be a little bit of both. I think they could cancel each other out. And so I'm going to be very interested in seeing the turnout among the towns. If there's one town I could pick on beyond Hamden, I'm interested in Woodbridge, quite frankly. I think that could be one place where you could squeak it out. Leslie's point, I do want to kind of go after, if you don't mind, Leslie. I get what you're saying, that maybe there's a void in leadership, but I will give credit to, Senator Logan's campaign staff. They've been out there door knocking. They've been very much engaged. They have been doing a lot of the groundwork to get the word out there. As a matter of fact, I have a couple of my own students on the campaign, and they're giving me a lot of good intel on some of the details in some of these towns. Maybe they're not getting nearly as many towns as they could, but they know that the places to go to. And we can't forget the one unique thing that I absolutely love about the Valley, you all do too. I think many voters assume that they might be registered to the political party and they're going to go that way. Doesn't always work out that way in the Valley. So we don't know what those results could be, especially in a district like this one. Let's be fair.
And then Leslie, you are again from Ansonia. So share with us, where is George Cabrera targeting? What's the town he is trying the hardest to win? If that's even such a thing. This might just be an idiotic reporter question, but tell us everything you know about George Cabrera, please.
Well, I think what George did was really tactical in the sense that he stayed present even after he lost. That's big. I mean, especially in a world right now where people are tired of talking points and people that aren't in leaders, that meant a lot to, I can tell you, to a lot of people in the Valley. And he has staying presence is a big thing, and constantly going after Logan, good or bad, whatever way. I think that is a smart move for any candidate that is either sort of think like, if it's a question mark, right? Like, if I'm going to run, staying present, showing communities that you care is what they want. So I think him laying the previous groundwork was really, really smart of him. And now, can I say where I think he's just now going after all, like he is not leaving any votes out there. And I mean, the do-over, the recount was in the Valley. So I we have to put that in perspective. Like he is going to spend time also in the Valley, as well as how the professor said in Hampden, which is large, is a huge district. And we also have to remember that Farmer, that primaried him, did put out some work out there. And we saw how close the vote was in Hampden. So that between Farmer and Cabrera, so that speaks also on itself. Like I said, both have great, best of luck to both of them, but it is an uphill battle. I think there's a lot of things that are gonna, a lot of factors that are gonna play into this, and how everyone has said it can go either way. It really can't. It's close. It's like a round two.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Judy, I'm sorry to interrupt. Were you done, Leslie? I apologize.
No, I'm good.
Judy, is this, what are you hearing from like Republicans in Derby, or any Republicans you may be in tune with? Is everybody gearing up for another close race?
I think in the Valley, George is good. I think he's going to do very well in the Valley. I think the ones he's worried about are Hampden and Woodbridge. Woodbridge is so liberal, so uber liberal. And Hampden, Horky's from Hampden. Or am I supposed to call him George? I'm not sure. He's from Hampden, and he's got all his union ties there. He's got a lot of stuff going on there. So he's a force.
When I interviewed him,
I don't know.
George.
I think he's too close
He goes
to call
by
him.
George, and I think you know that, Judy.
Pardon?
He goes
What?
by George. He goes by George.
He might change the spelling on his name.
Well, I think he goes by George.
But you know what? I just realized my computer's not plugged in. So I may have to step away for a second while Stefan is talking to plug my computer in, because I'm at 52%. But Stefan Bohuniak, what is I know you're Seymour. You're a bit, you're literally above. You're not above in terms.
And below.
And below, yeah. So what's your take on this race as an insider not afraid to?
I am completely fascinated by this race. I think it's probably one of the most interesting, if not the most interesting, in the whole state this year. But what I will say is, and I could say a lot about this race, I think George Cabrera is going to win, and I think he's going to win a lot more comfortably than people might expect. What's going to happen is Hampden and Woodbridge will go for Cabrera. I think everybody knows that. Bethany and Naugatuck will likely go for Logan. He has a big chance to kind of run it up in Ansonia, possibly, because that's his hometown. And he's going to win Beacon Falls. The interesting towns to me are Ansonia and Derby, if you want to look at it on a town by town level, because George Cabrera, and I was critical of him last time, didn't spend enough time in the lower valley. He kind of took it for granted, I think, or maybe he thought it was a lost cause. But I think had he spent a little more time, maybe even a day or two door knocking more, he could have pulled that race off. Now, what I think is interesting, and that's what I came in prepared to say, that I think he put the time in. If you look back to it's like ancient history now based on everything else that we're dealing with. But if you look back to the Stop and Shop strikes of last year, George Cabrera was a leader. He was the leader on the front lines of that. And that was an issue that kind of united Republicans and Democrats all over this area of the state. You saw Republican leaders of all these towns going out and supporting those workers. And people don't forget that. And people know that he was fighting for them. Now, what I will say, and I had all that prepared and I thought that's what was going to tip it for him. I just went back and looked at some numbers out of Hamden. In 2016, about 28,000 people voted in Hamden. In 2018, about 25,000 people voted in Hamden. So that's a difference of 3,000. I would expect that we'll be closer to that 28,000 number this year. And if that's the case, I think Cabrera will win comfortably. He's going to win. He's going to win 65 to 70% of Hamden. And you extrapolate that over 3,000 voters. That's going to, I think, give him the cushion he needs to win.
So, Stefan, you just answered my next question. I was going to ask each panelist to make a prediction. Stefan just predicted Cabrera and backed it up with some stats.
Cabrera, I have him 54-46. That's my prediction.
Now, not everybody has to give us that precise, so don't feel bad if you didn't. But Judy, who do you think? You think Logan's going to pull it off?
I think he can pull it off. I think it's going to be extremely close again. I think some of the new people coming out aren't as much on their side as some people think they are. So I think it's going to be very close. I think George could pull it out. I think George, the other George, probably will. So
you're saying Logan, right? I just want to
Logan. Okay, Logan, 51-49.
Okay.
That's what I'm going.
All right, next up, let's go to Leslie to give her prediction.
Well, I agree with Judy. I think it's really we're going to see a recount again, most likely. I think that it is really hard to get an incumbent out. It takes a lot of resources. It takes a lot of persistence, a lot of laying down the ground. And to me, it's hard. I would say it's anyone. If it's going to really be by a small margin. If Cabrera wins, it's not going to be by a lot. This
is very interesting. Jonathan Wharton, what's your take on this race? Who's going to win it, Professor?
Incumbent George. And let me pick apart Leslie and Stefan's points. Tapped on something that I totally overlooked. And Leslie, I'm glad that you brought out Justin Farmer. I always like, divisions within political parties. I live for that. And we know very well what was going on in Hamden. I know she's smiling. She knows what I know. And that is, well, for you guys who don't know, he's actually an advisee of mine, Justin Farmer. And I was the one who actually pushed him to run it in the first place, to run for councilman. But I tried to talk him out of not running for state senate. We spoke a few times about this. Look, you guys know there's been a lot of shakeup in Hamden politics. There's been a lot of internal, it's not even political, it's more generational local politics. And so he really wanted to kind of get away from that and create even concerns about what's going on with the Senate race and get himself involved in that. So getting to Stefan's point, he started lobbying and started going around door knocking places that the other George didn't go to, Cabrera. So that was kind of fascinating as a way to do it in the Valley. So he certainly knew the weakness points of that. Now, I guess the big question is, can that be unified, at least among the Democrats, as a strategy plan to get those people to turn out in this race? That'll be the big question. But I will give
Jonathan, let's look at the results of that election between George and Justin.
Yeah, sure.
Well, why don't we look at the numbers and see who won in the Valley? We should take a look at that, and we should see what the voters chose. And I love Justin. Justin's one of my favorite people I've ever met in politics. I would ride and die with him all day long. But he got his clock cleaned, and it's not going to affect the race, I think, very much.
I would disagree and go with Professor Warren. I think Justin was very tactical. He hit the areas where people forget the Valley has dense populations where we have minority votes, Black and brown people, and and the message that Farmer was giving resonated with the people of color. And I think that is and even in a national, don't take any vote for granted. And he did not. And he really upped his game. And I think if Cabrera analyzed how he lost, was either lost or was really close, it was a close win in precinct, which this is how I feel like he should have dissected it and then regroup himself, if he did his homework and kind of took on what Professor said, the tactics that Farmer did, and knocked those doors and registered voters. Because the thing with the Valley, especially what I'm seeing in Ansonia, in Derby, we're getting an exodus from Bridgeport, New York. That is all Black and brown voters that have not registered, that have been disengaged. If he really goes in there in those areas, in those pockets, that's how Cabrera would honestly win by a slim. So that is just how I feel. Don't take it for granted.
And Jonathan,
you might be mischaracterizing a little bit what I'm saying. I'm not saying that he's taking it for granted. I'm actually saying the opposite. I think that George Cabrera has learned from 2018, and he is not going to be repeating the mistakes of overlooking some parts of the Valley like he did last time.
But it had to take the primary to remind him of that, didn't it?
I don't think so. He was here since the day after he lost. He was at every event. Like I mentioned last year, he was leading the lines last year during the strikes in the Valley. He understands how important the Valley is, and he has since November, 5th of 2018.
Doubt that, as a matter of fact. Eugene knows I went to a lot of these inaugurations in the Valley at the beginning of the year. I was really taken back the presence of George Cabrera. He was there everywhere and just discussed and engaged. But you have to give credit that Justin did pick up the slack in Derby and other places.
Yeah, I agree.
Not, and I was kind of impressed with that. Was
agreed.
Jonathan, who did you pick? Who you picking in this race? What's your prediction?
Oh, incumbent George. Yeah, I would give
you
it.
May have said that. I apologize.
Right, but I'm assuming that Woodbridge will turn out for him. I have to base that on that. So he's got a lot of work to do in Woodbridge.
And there's some of the points everyone's raising here could be separate podcast episodes in and of themselves. So this is very exciting for me. So thank you for the education so far. Oh, I'm going to make a prediction. I get to make my prediction. I think, again, it's going to be another toss-up. I think some Republicans slept in 2018. So I'm saying tie goes to the runner, and that's the incumbent in this place by a very slim margin. But there will be recounts. I agree with Leslie, and lawyers. There will be lawyers.
And lawyers.
There's
So
always lawyers.
Right. And those recounts, it's
Yippee.
Him and Howe, great law firm.
there we go. All right.
From experience, it's crazy. It's
oh yeah, that's right. We were in that same room together. It was like 110 degrees.
No one wanted water. I'm like, are you sure? It's been 3 hours.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, what a vibe. All right, so moving on to the 104th district, another exciting race, I think, here in the lower Naugatuck Valley, Derby and Ansonia specifically. Here we have incumbent state rep Cara Rochelle, a Democrat, being challenged by Myra Rivers, a Republican. To me, just in my observation, fly on the wall, it's sort of a classic Valley race, maybe a classic race in general, where and it was a Tony Steferi tactic, Judy, I'll say this, where the challenger picks an issue and just hammers the incumbent all day long on one issue, while the incumbent basically says, look, I'm too busy governing and doing my job and helping people, and kind of does one of these, it doesn't acknowledge that there is really even an opponent in the race, a common tactic, I think. And I think the issue that Rivers is hammering is the police accountability bill. They're painting Rochelle as anti-law enforcement. Rochelle's campaign is saying basically, well, you're purposely misleading people on what this bill does and where I stand on things. But then at the same time, and I think this is interesting, Derby and Ansonia are experiencing a bit of a crime wave right now. Derby property crime from a year ago is up more than 100% in some areas. We've had a rash of shootings in Derby and Ansonia. I don't think you can point at all to the police accountability bill as the cause of what's going on. But my point is nevertheless, crime seems to be on people's mind in Derby and Ansonia. So my question, will Cara Rochelle's vote on the police accountability bill, is that enough to take away votes and to cause, I think what is safe to say would be an upset if she loses? I badly worded that question. Does the police accountability bill hurt Cara Rochelle in the Valley? Let's start with Leslie. Sorry.
No worries, I was on mute. Well, we're seeing a divisive talking points, which is trending. and nationally, it's coming from the national level and it's trickling down to the local and the state. So I just want to focus on the facts, not divisive points, because it's really important to do that. The policing bill, quite frankly, there are a lot of great things from there. They're recognizing trauma that affects a great deal of our officers with everything that's happening. So it increases access to it. It protects them against retaliation. And I mean, what better way? Mental health is something that has been hurting our community, and we don't address it in either way. So that's a huge component of it. It's critical. I think it provides $400 million in new bonding authorities to towns. So last year, if we don't remember, not last year, but 5 years ago, if we don't remember, the body camera bill, it only passed a grant. So now we're giving more money for good policing purposes. And then we're going and we're requiring implicit bias and training and de-escalation things. So those are, to me, those are just three critical things that this bill does that is helping return the scale, bring balance into it, bring transparency, police accountability into it. And those are big things, and that needs to be said. So that's my take on that, to be quite honest. We have we got to steer away from that, because that type of language, the anti-cop, the defunding, it's hurting our communities. It's hurting our relationships that's already infringed upon, that have been deteriorated, the police and the communities relationships. So we have to, if we look at it at ways to better that, that's what we need to focus on.
And Judy, I was going to throw it to you now. Have you been paying attention to this race, and do you think that bill and Cara Rochelle's vote yes for the police accountability bill will cost her votes November 3rd?
No way I couldn't pay attention to this, because Myra has signs all over Connecticut. There are thousands, I think, of lawn signs with Myra's face on it. She has just taken, I'm interested in this race mostly to see if you put out enough lawn signs, are you going to win? It's just incredible. And now she has a huge billboard on Route 34 by the rib place going anti-Cara.
Reed's Barbecue. Just a shout out to Reed's Barbecue. Sorry.
And she's got that huge thing there. People don't tend to understand the bills that are in Congress. I mean, go look at the Derby ballot and try to figure out exactly what they're proposing in the way of charter revisions.
Hey, that's tomorrow's podcast.
Yeah, I'll give them like a prize if they can understand what the frick are they trying to do. So people are just like Leslie says, people are taking the easy route, the understandable route, and they see the bill and they say, oh, they're trying to defund the police. And we have a lot of police here in the Valley, and they don't like it. Be it right, be it wrong, it has some good in there. I also think it has some bad in there, because I think it leaves the police very open to lawsuits and certain things that is going to scare them. And I don't think it works. I don't think it does anything for the bad police. We're trying to get control of the bad police so they don't do those bad things more than anything. So yeah, I think it does. I think anybody who is running on the ballot on the working party's, working families party slot, they're going to get grouped into that. Oh, they want to defund the police, and it's going to hurt them. I honestly believe it will.
Stefan, I'm going to throw it to you.
Sure. Obviously, that bill has become divisive, but I think it's become divisive a lot more amongst hyper-partisans than anything else. I think most people on the left would say that the bill doesn't do quite enough in certain regards. But what I will say is that there's been so many like gross mischaracterizations about what the bill actually does. And I'd like to read the words malicious, wanton, or willful. Those words have to be, they have been judged in court to have occurred before any sort of officer is liable for anything. And if you think that police should have free reign to do malicious, wanton, or willful acts, then we have to have a completely different conversation. Now, putting that aside, I think it's going to, that particular bill, I think it does far more good than bad. For example, it mandates body cams and dashboard cams on every police officer and police vehicle. I think that actually far helps officers more than the public. It allows them to, have it out there black and white. It's not he said, she said, which is obviously a good thing. If you kind of take out the emotions around it. And yeah, Myra has made this the central point of her campaign. Quite frankly, I don't think she has any other real talking points. She hasn't early. I think she's getting a lot of bad advice in this race, to be honest with you. I think there's a lot of years of political grudges that are going into this race that are kind of outside of the two candidates themselves. And I'll be interested to see how it shakes out, but I don't see this being as big a deal as the Rivers campaign is making it out to be.
Okay, thank you, Stefan. And then for the final say on this particular matter, Professor Wharton. You're muted, sir.
Oh God, how many times do I do that in class?
It's gotta be.
My freshmen have to remind me all the time I'm muted. I think most people would prefer me that way. The thing, occupational hazard, Leslie. I think that, I've not been following this race as much as I should. But I am intrigued by it in the sense of this anti-police, pro-police business. And certainly going back to Judy's point, what does this all mean, certainly among some of these towns? In many places, obviously, police funding is not so much an issue or concern, but there are issues certainly around police, abuse and that kind of issue. So I wonder how much that's going to resonate within the district. As far as the bill itself, I have some concerns. Most people do have reservations about how far it's gone, but I have to be frank with you, I'm more concerned about how it was handled. To have this take place during a pandemic in a special legislative session, so you didn't allow enough time to filter through what really should be done in the middle of summer, was just an anomaly. And so for me, I've been more concerned about what does this mean in terms of timing of everything. And I wonder, to go against Myra's, to help out Myra's opponents, at least, are they politicizing that? Are they harping on that it wasn't even so much her, but others who went on board with it in the first place, because they went through this so quickly. It was really taken back. It was almost like a rushing job. So I wonder if voters are going to recognize that. And I think we're seeing the results of this right now. There's been a lot of concern just in the last month alone of people going through it, wanting to update it, wanting to revise the bill, wanting to reshape it and find a better way of dealing with it. And I think this is going to come back to haunt us for a while on really both sides of the aisle in terms of doing a better job at dealing with a bill like this and adding more leverage for towns. I think people are forgetting that this is a statewide bill and the towns want a better way of shaping this.
If I may, Professor, do you believe that our state shouldn't be legislating every other year?
I have concerns. In my personal opinion, I think I have real concerns as to whether we should really be a hybrid model, Stefan, because I don't think we do enough work in the springtime to have it where we are a part-time legislature, really technically a hybrid of having special legislative sessions. I'm not lobbying for suggesting a full-time legislature, but we could do a better job at operating bills like this in a better process. That's my concern. This was done so last minute and slammed together the way it should have been. It could have been a better job of doing this early on as opposed to in the middle of summer.
I kind of want to say something in terms of kind of like what you hit the point is that we are a part-time legislature, and the work I think that as a freshman that Kara has done, I have almost a decade of experience working inside the legislation. I will tell you, being a freshman and getting the work that Kara has done, working across aisles, really moving the finger on or the point for the Valley Regional Fire. I understand it didn't get done, but the way she moved across party lines, got over 100 signatures on that, has been on it, has been on the transportation for the Valley. I mean, this girl lives and breathes public servants. And that is what resonates a lot with people, is that she has been everywhere. And it's not just showing face, but actually being an active public servant. I mean, in the pandemic, she has worked nonstop. And that kind of shows, in a sense, it's hard. And as a part-time legislator, it's really hard to look and work and also worry about your campaign. Am I going to get elected? Am I not? But she has done it with such elegance and such regalness. And she is really a fighter to get a bill that she authored and she got it passed and with bipartisanship. as a freshman, that is really impressive. So I think that Myra really has to show what, aside from the police bill, how are you going to top her relentless advocacy, her fight? She really put Ansonia in the map. She brought a lot of money to Ansonia, which needs economic development and to education. So, I mean, people are looking for talking, like, actual, what are you going to do for me? Especially when you have a freshman that has done a lot that a lot of seasoned legislators have not done a lot.
Well, Gary Winfield, who was the Senate version of the bill here, was the one who obviously was one of the co-sponsors. You can't forget, obviously, his freshman year, he led a lot of efforts towards ending capital punishment. And so he did that his first term as well. So sometimes you do have some lawmakers who will make a stamp and really make their names known. And Gary Winfield did that as well years ago. And he's done that certainly in terms of pushing this through. I just have serious reservations and concerns, and we're seeing this right now, of how quickly it has been handled and what the implications could be in terms of future lawsuits and oversight concerns. And is this really going to solve the greater problem?
To your point, Jonathan, Gary Winfield is now considered a leading candidate to be the next governor. So I think there's something to be said for getting a lot done in your first term in the state legislature.
As a matter of fact, I think you all know, he's no secret, he is the AUP, the American Association of University Professors, the union for at Southern, as a matter of fact, representative. So, I know very well. Matter of fact, Stefan, we park our cars next to each other at Southern. So, and God knows we bump into each other in the cafeteria and talk politics. You should only see the cashiers and how we talk half hour fighting it out. And it's by the way, we actually get along better than you think. Honestly, I think you'd be surprised.
Oh, I'm sure you do.
Our offices are directly on top of each other. If we could have the FBI throw wires between us for that conversation, you can only imagine, but we do get along well. I'm just, and I agree. One thing, if you want to flip it back, by the way, Stefan, since you threw it at me, I think you all know the gossip was that his name was mentioned as a governor candidate. But obviously, that was talk a couple of years ago to go with Ned Lamont. Obviously, that didn't work out that way. So I don't discount the fact that he would want to be a statewide candidate. I easily could see that. I think most people do. But it makes me wonder, I wonder if this is a moment for him to kind of politicize on with other people who are freshmen, like a certain lawmaker.
And let me just let's take it back to the politics of what's happening locally in this race. Myra Rivers and Cara Rochelle, State Rep Cara Rochelle, the incumbent. I guess, like, on the flip side of the coin that I had asked earlier, and Leslie sort of answered this. You anticipated my question. She is a first-term lawmaker, which, I mean, if you're ever going to knock out an incumbent, it's of course at the end of that first term. But she does seem pretty entrenched. It feels like she's been there longer than one term. And she has the endorsement, I notice, of Jim Gilday, who Judy knows, a Derby Republican.
And an independent, which is really the independent party.
Former Republican. He can't stand them anymore.
Former Republican, I think.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, I apologize, Jim Gilday. But I also
Republican
noticed
with Democrat signs all over his lawn, so that's a weird Republican.
Don't they call those Valley?
That's
Yeah, really. I don't know what that is.
It's so hard. I was just thinking, this sign over here is Joseph DiMartino when he ran on Judy's slate. You managed this campaign. Joseph DiMartino on the Republican is now the president of the Derby Board of Aldermen as a Democrat, which is over there. So that's, But I noticed Cara got she's on the ballot, Democrat, and correct me if I'm wrong, Working Families, and the Independent Party.
Yes.
And the other people on the ballot in Ansonia, at least, that have the Independent Party line on the ballot there are George Logan and Margaret Stryker. So does that say something about how she's going to do? Like, she seems to have some bipartisan or some independent support. And
she actually might be the only Democrat in the state that was endorsed by the Independent Party. I'd have to check that, but that's what I've heard.
I'm sorry, Leslie, I interrupted you. You said that's correct?
That's what I've heard as well. Stefan mentioned that she is one of either one and only or very few independent. And that does speak, I think, a lot, because we do have in the Valley, like I think in a lot of places, a big independent voter population.
Not to be confused with unaffiliated voters.
Yeah, I'm unaffiliated.
But they tend to go unaffiliated. I have always seen from from trends, unaffiliated would go independent.
So
Most
Leslie,
of them call themselves independent
That's
as
it.
opposed to unaffiliated. Yeah.
That's to confuse me.
that's
Yeah.
it. That's it.
Don't get confused.
And to be
All right,
frank, I'll
I
help
was
you.
going to ask you guys. I was going to go around, but forget it. Let's skip straight to predictions because we're an hour and 5 minutes in. You can see why I decided not to actually cover these races this year. It's a lot of work. Who's going to win? Judy, let's go with you. Is it going to be Kara Rochelle, the incumbent, or Myra Rivers, the Republican challenger?
I imagine it'll be Kara because as Leslie mentioned, she works her butt off. She's doing a good job. But I think the difference between them is going to be a lot smaller than people think because again, I go to the lawn sign thing. This is interesting to me from an advertising viewpoint. If you put up that many signs and get in the right places, what's the effect? I think it's large. So I would say maybe, I don't know, 57-43.
All right, there we go, Judy. Okay, Leslie, what say you?
It's a toss up, but I think it's definitely, again, kind of like it would be slim. It might be, you know what? I'm going to take it back. I don't know. I think it's a really one of those interesting, it plays
Kara
with the
Rochelle,
Valley
Myra
politics.
Rivers.
It plays with the politics in the Valley. You have Democrats that that end up voting Republicans sometimes, and Republicans that vote Democrats. It plays really with the internal struggle in Ansonia. So it's gonna really, to me, it's gonna be interesting what happens.
Be right back.
Sure. Yeah. Hey, I forgot I could turn off my video. I got up and to plug in my computer. But wait, I'm actually, Leslie, I want to stick with you because I'm not sure I got an answer from you. Who are you predicting is going to win, Kara Rochelle or Myra Rivers?
I think it's one of those races that you have to keep a close eye because any little thing, every minute counts. Just because to me, it plays on the Valley priorities and the Valley, Valley politics identity, where you could have a Democrat that votes Republican. I mean, we have it here. Our mayor, he catered a lot to a lot of Democrats. So it's going to be to me, it's going to be one of those really interesting things, and that's going to happen here.
Stefan Bohuniak, what do you think is going to happen in this race?
Kara will not like me saying this. I will probably hear about this after. Kara will win 65-35.
Landslide. Professor Wharton, I don't know how closely you're not following this as much as.
But let me add in a couple of points that you all have said. I want to chime in on Judy's point. Lawn signs really only lead to maybe 3 to 4%. It's not that significant, unfortunately. Statistics have said that. And then as far as going to Leslie's point, I will say and stress this over and over again. What you're mentioning are split ticket voters, and that's what I really cherish about the Valley. It's not always about the party as it is about the candidate, and that's why I really revere Connecticut's overlooked region. I wish more people could respect that. And so it's the split ticket voters that really do decide this. I think if the Republicans were to put more money into it, I'm talking about from State Central, and of course I'm no longer in State Central, I'm a retired member of the party now because I'm kind of useless now as an old professor just teaching. I would say put more money into that race and politicize the heck out of what happened with the police reform bill in the first place. Now, will the state party listen to me? No, because they never did. They don't want to listen to old professor. They might as well be freshmen in a class, so I'll give it to the incumbent.
J.R. Romano might be down. His parents live down the road. He might be there. I can go knock on the door.
They have put some money. They have done some ad buys for that race and done
But
some
if they put
literature.
more money into it, Stefan, you know what I mean.
No, I know, like real money. Yeah.
If they did and they did more ads, it could be a potential toss-up. But I will give it to the incumbent, just going with common wisdom.
And I'm gonna also predict that Rochelle will win. I think she has a broad coalition of support. But keep in mind, I've never predicted anything correctly, so I probably just jinxed that race. So you're welcome. All right, moving on. Another
quick
state.
note, real quick, Eugene. Quick note for
go ahead.
Jonathan. Quick note for Jonathan. I understand the lawn sign thing being only like a 5%, but have you driven around here?
Oh yeah, I have.
There's a lot. I want to see is this excessive amount of lawn signs. Will that push it further? That's
I
what
saw Myra on that car dealership on the corner of Main Street. Myra has 5 signs on the exact same corner. So
they're everywhere.
I'm talking about Town Fair Tire. Town Fair Tire is my.
Oh, I think that's probably Ken Hughes.
Yeah, right.
We're naming specific properties.
I love it. I'm telling you, if I could come up with a book on just the Valley alone and have a chapter dedicated to signs in the Valley, that would be it, Judy.
Okay. Anyway, that was what I was referring to, is so many of them.
Of course.
Yeah, I'm wondering. Well, I don't want to. I'm going off. I'll go off on a tangent. All right, so let's move on to the 114th district. This is the race, of course, to replace House Minority Leader Themis Claridis of Derby. That district includes Derby, Orange, and Woodbridge, places I don't go to because I don't leave the valley. And that's no insult to them. I feel like this race, maybe it's just because I'm not covering it, is sort of under the radar. Like you don't really hear about it. Like the current, I don't think, and then CT Mirror, in terms of who's going to replace them as Claridis, I feel like this race is just sort of really under the radar. And the candidates, by the way, and correct me if I'm saying last names incorrectly, please. The Democrats are running Mary Wielander, and the Republicans are running Dan DeBarba. She's Claridis, of course, is very popular in the Valley. And I guess my question to kick off the conversation is, does her popularity automatically transfer to the Republican DeBarba in this race? Or are we seeing a surge of Democrats saying, get out the vote, we can take this seat in the House? And I guess, Judy, this is probably very much in your wheelhouse because you're a volunteer on the campaign.
I'm the treasurer on the campaign.
Treasurer, okay. Sorry. Are you going to lose?
No.
Go ahead.
I don't think that Themis's popularity will transfer over because she's just a different entity. She's very well known. And again, I'm going back to all this Democrat, Republican. I think that's going away a little bit. So I think Mary Wellander's not doing much. I haven't seen any flyers from her. Very few signs. I don't believe she's gone door to door at all. She hasn't knocked on any doors. She hasn't answered a lot of questions. That may be one of the reasons the campaign seems so quiet. Is there's nothing coming from that end.
Or is this an indictment of the press and sort of the hollowing of newspapers and the inability of someone like me and my organization to fill in? Is that she's quiet or just no one's asking the questions? No,
she's just quiet. No, I don't think it's the press. I mean, I could list a few things about the press that I could change, but she could admit. But
I will have no reaction to that.
No, not going to react.
Go ahead.
I'm interrupting. Your eyebrow kind of moving. Yeah, I mean, of course I love Dan DeBarba because I'm his treasurer. This guy is he's working so hard. He's knocked on every frickin' door in the 114th. And he is just so highly qualified. I don't know, maybe Mary is kind of like coward a bit. I don't know. We ask ourselves when we have our meetings, like, what's Mary up to?
That's interesting.
Heard anything? So
Stefan Bohuniak, do you have any insight into this race? And again, I know I'm putting you in a position where you're not the Derby guy, but
no, I pay attention to all of these things. I'm pretty close with the Derby DTC chairman, Oni Malerba, so I have a pretty good understanding of what's going on. To kind of start with your first point, I don't think Themis Claridis has much to do with this race at all. She's not on the ballot anymore. Not that she didn't serve her district well for many years, but the intrigue around her is more of her rank as the potential first female Speaker of the House, which didn't happen for her, unfortunately. But her statewide persona is more interesting to the press typically than how she handles her district. With that said, she had won by comfortable margins for many years. 2018 was the tightest it's been. And that was Mary Wielander. Typically, when somebody runs the first time, they won't win, but they will do better the second time. I think with an open seat, Mary has a very good chance of winning that race now, particularly if you look at the towns that she represents, or she would represent. Woodbridge is going to go big for Mary. Orange is interesting, but Orange might be moving into that kind of suburban enclave that's going to come out strong against Trump. And I think if you're going to come out strong against Trump, she might have a chance to pick up a bunch of votes there. So and of course, Judy wouldn't necessarily know what's going on with Mary Wielander. I think part of that is intentional. But I do think that Mary has done a lot of work this campaign, perhaps a lot of it under the radar, which is actually sometimes more effective. But if you gotta put a gun to my head, give me a prediction, I would say it'll be Mary by a couple points.
Jonathan Wharton, you have any thoughts on this race? And earlier, are you saying that All right, so a future gubernatorial ticket is going to be George Logan, lieutenant governor, and Themis Claridis for governor. Is that what we're seeing?
Not going that far now. Now, don't put words in my mouth.
Oh, sorry.
See how the press is? No, the thing is that, look, there's always been talk about Themis for statewide office. There's no doubt about that. And going back to Stefan's point, people were always hopeful that, she could be a speaker. Look, I will add to all this. Don't discount the Claridis brand. The family is so well known, is so entrenched in the Valley that support, that district is well known. And so, yeah, you could claim it's a DR thing, but I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt that endorsement and the family support matters. And so that's significant, even in a district race like this one, to fill her seat. By the way, going back to Stefan's point, I've always been intrigued by Orange. It's one of those quirky towns. You have all these unaffiliated voters, so many of them, but they lean Republican. And as a matter of fact, secretly, are you ready for this, Valley folk? There are a lot of libertarians in that town. So, I know, I think there's some in the Valley, I think, small L, not capital party L. So who's to say those people in the Orange might go towards the Republican candidate? Could be. I won't discount that because it's Orange. So I'll add that to that in that district.
Leslie, do you have any thoughts on this particular race?
I think I agree with a little bit of everything that everyone is saying. I think it's like one of the, I think it's going to be a battleground. I believe she ran like a couple years ago, if my memory.
Stefan was saying that, yes.
Yeah, she did. It was about 54, 40, 45 or so.
I mean,
it's a lot closer than people might think.
You look at those numbers, you look also that it's trending blue. I mean, if lawn signs told everything, it shows that that it's going to be a slim, whoever wins is going to be very slim. But it is definitely, I don't know much about it, to be quite honest with you, but I just know that Woodbridge is trending blue. You're seeing that, and so it makes you wonder, were like the Republicans or the voters that voted for Themis, were they?
Oh, we lost Leslie. We lost you there for a second.
I did it again. I was mentioning, it makes you kind of wonder, were the Republicans in that district that Themis represents, if they were loyal to her because she is a brand, or were they loyal to the Republican Party? So it does leave that question out there. So I definitely think it's one of those battlegrounds.
I don't think she carried Woodbridge last time, so I don't think she has that grip on Woodbridge.
Okay. Let's does anyone else want to add anything, or do you want to move on? We're at the
I'll add to that.
Mary won Woodbridge pretty comfortably last time around. I'm looking at the numbers right now. She won by about 500 votes.
Yeah.
I don't know much about it.
Me neither.
I want to add Leslie's point. I think the thing is that, look, Themis is both. Yes, Republican leader and official, but also at the same time has a brand. It's a little bit of both. Heck, even some Democrats like her. You ready for this? Colin McEnroe is actually a fan of hers.
Colin McEnroe.
That never happened. So I'm telling you, that's why, going back to your point, Eugene, who knows? Don't discount her for statewide office. And I'm not saying for governor. Why not U.S. Senate? Especially if somebody like, I don't know, Joe Biden does win, and we know the potential Blumenthal could end up in Washington, we could have an open seat. Something to think about.
Oh, this is blowing my mind now. Thank you. This is like adrenaline going through my veins here. All right, we're going to move on to the House District 105, which I think Stefan is a little familiar with. This is where, and let me know if I'm getting these numbers right. I get the numbers of the districts confused. We have incumbent state rep Nicole Claridis Dietrich of Seymour being challenged by Democrat Chris Mad Dog Bowen. I just gave him that nickname. Is that no? I'm just kidding. Chris Bowen, a member of the Seymour Board of Selectmen, who basically, he emerged, from my perspective, he emerged from the pages of the Valley Indy comment board on Facebook, was my friend on Twitter, and I count him as a friend in real life, and now I'm in this awkward position where he's entered the public arena. But that being said, I don't think I'm going out on a limb by saying that Nicole Claridis Dietrich is a major favorite to win this race. And I guess Stefan, am Is that accurate?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you want to look at, and you guys might think maybe I'm a little, I've been a little biased with some of my predictions and things like that. I'm actually working on Chris's campaign, and I'm pretty comfortable telling it like it is. As much as a brand and a name as Clairtis is in the 114th, I would say it's triply so in the 105th. When you think back to the Clairtis supermarket days, one was right in the middle of Seymour. That plaza still holds the Clairtis name. Everybody knows somebody or did work at that store for a long time. They also had another store in Derby, also in our district. So you look at all of that, and it's never going to be easy to defeat a Clairtis in this area. With that said, we did not run a credible campaign against her last time around. So any data that could be gleaned from 2018 is inconclusive in my opinion, but she did win about 2-1. I think that we will certainly narrow that gap this time around. How much is yet to be seen. Chris, if nothing else, is a pretty fierce worker. He has not had any sort of perception problem on knocking doors. He's been on doors every day since July, like literally every day. So we've done a tremendous amount of voter contact, which is the most important thing in these kind of races. With that said, hey, if he won, it would be a major upset, and everybody kind of knows that. But if he's able to keep it within 10 points or so, that would be considered pretty impressive by a lot of people, I think. And
one thing, Chris and the campaign, it hasn't gone negative at all. I mean, he's pretty much out there, and he's said as much. I don't know if some of the if I'm seeing filtered Facebook posts from him or Twitter or where, I don't know where I'm seeing these things, but he's pretty much said he's not going to win. But he's in it for sort of the experience and just to get some ideas out there. Am I right there, Stefan? Is that?
Yeah, anytime. Well, I don't necessarily agree with the characterization where he doesn't think there's any way he could win. I think there's
I think
there's a possibility, however remote, that he could win. But with that said, we have very intentionally and very steadfastly refused to go negative. To her credit, Nicole has done the same. However, there's some pretty, I don't want to use the words I'd like to use to describe some of our RTC counterparts in this town, but they're underhanded, perhaps. They've done some very dirty things, and it's not going to be soon forgotten. With that said, from the campaigns themselves, if anything, my advice to Chris that's fallen on deaf ears the most is to be a little bit critical of your opponent sometimes. He's been a little too congenial. But to that point, we're friendly with Nicole. We don't have big personal problems with Nicole. I disagree with a lot of the votes that she's taken in Hartford. I think that she's, she doesn't understand some of the positions she takes, in my opinion, but that's to be expected. But by and large, I think she's not the worst thing around.
Has Chris kind of gone rogue here in terms of, I saw he uploaded his own campaign video where he advocated for nuclear energy in the Valley. And in that video, he basically said my political slicksters, I've pushed to the side. Am I reading into that, or he's gone off the farm?
That's family business, but it's not directed at anybody who is working on his campaign, me included. Everything that he has done has been in concert with the people who work for him now.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything to share about this particular race?
I do. I have a lot. I'm going to counter out on at least. I a lot of great points. This is one race I've been following. Look, I'll confess, Nicole and I are friends. We've gotten along very well from the beginning a few years ago. I admire her a lot. And as a matter of fact, quite frankly, I guess it shouldn't surprise you all, I've shouted her a lot as well. Anytime I go to the Valley, I usually give her a call. I shoot her a text. She'll show up to meetings every time in the district. Like, I'm amazed. Her schedule, I've been really taken back. She's flexible. She wants to talk to people. She engages with people. I've gone to Seymour meetings with her, a couple of them. I've certainly gone to the inauguration meetings in the Valley. She showed up to every inauguration meeting in the Valley with me. And then she knows everyone. And it's not so much as a Republican thing. It goes back to Leslie's point. She knows the Democrats. And I'm like, okay, why do you get along with Democrats? Like, how is this happening? And so it gets to the congenial point that Stefan brought out. She is an anomaly, but she's the valley. She gets along not so much with both sides, but she recognizes in being pragmatic, you have to. And in order to get support for her to get reelection, in order for her to get proposals through even in the General Assembly, you have to. So she is terribly pragmatic. But the one thing I really appreciate about her, she's under the radar. She's not like her sister, where she's getting all the Klug likes and the attention. Nicole is very understated, knows some of the finer details. Her network is amazing. And let me tell you something. I study politicians for a living. I don't like politicians. I really don't. No offense, Stefan. I know you were one. You guys just turn me off.
You should follow my Twitter if you think that you wouldn't like my
I'm trying to
my
find
politician leadings. I just followed you.
The
Yeah.
Behuniak.
Follow
He's
you,
the
right?
Behuniak.
Okay, because I love Twitter, so I'm going to follow you back. Although I have to tell you, I tend to be a bit puckish on Twitter, so don't.
I'm pretty familiar with your Twitter page.
Oh dear. All right, so
Not in a bad way.
I tend to cause a lot of trouble. Leslie, fair warning. So and Eugene knows how I act on Twitter. It's my alter ego. But the thing is that she's good at this, and so for me, I don't like politicians. A lot of friends of mine in the Valley, including Kurt Miller, beat me up. Kurt Miller used to beat me up saying, Doc does not like anyone, which is true. I don't. I didn't even want to work for Kurt Miller's campaign. And
I could see that. It's Kurt Miller. I mean, he's,
But you have a beer with him, and he's a great guy. And I
Yeah,
end up,
he's a good guy.
maybe politicians aren't so bad. I felt the same way about Nicole. I was ready to write her off. I thought politicians stink. They're the worst people in the world. This is why I teach and why I don't like politicians. And I meet somebody like Nicole. I'm like, you know one thing? She ain't half bad. So I think there's something about her that it resonates in the Valley. I'll give her props. And going back to Stefan's point, yes, a Claritas sister thing, the Claritas family, but you know what thing? Nicole's her own person.
All right, Judy or Leslie, is there anything you wanted to add to the Claritas Teacher versus Chris Bowen? I apologize for giving him the name Mad Dog, but I think it's good, Stefan. Can we?
Ran that?
Sure. He's definitely a unique character in politics. That's for sure.
Yeah. I think Nicole will win pretty handily. And I can say for Chris, he's never for a loss of words.
All right, Leslie.
Thank you. I think that's one of the nicer things a Republican has said about him, really. So thank you.
I'm going to skip on this one. I don't know enough to put input, but if the majority says yes, then they would know more. It seems like they know more about the in and outs of it. So I'll leave it to that.
Thank you. Okay, let's just close it out with, we'll try to go lightning round here. In Seymour, there's actually 2 more races. Seymour has like 1,000 representatives in Hartford. Kevin Kelly, the state senator, is running unopposed. Then in Senate District 32, there's Eric Berthel of Watertown. He's the incumbent Republican running against the Democrat. Jeffrey, Stefan, how's he say his last name?
Damaris.
All right, so let's go around. Stefan, who's going to win that race?
That is probably the most red district in the whole state. Berthel is kind of bumbling his way through this one in many regards, but I think that he'll hold on relatively closer
Jonathan
than
Wharton?
it normally should be for him.
It is a
Sorry.
very Republican district, so I will definitely agree with that.
Judy?
I don't know much about it, so yeah, I'll agree to.
Leslie?
Likewise, I don't know much about it either. So I agree with both of them.
Now I don't feel so bad for not running a press release in 11 years. I just found out he represents Seymour. All right, Congress.
Oh,
Now I've heard some from some Democrats there. I have like 1 or 2 people I check in with before we do these things, and they won't go on the record, but they'll give me some little insights. And I hear Rosa DeLauro, they're slightly worried here that she's actually she's in a race to some extent. So lightning round, Rosa DeLauro or the challenger, Margaret Stryker. Leslie.
Isn't someone else running as well? Isn't it?
Margaret.
Green Party.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for correcting me on.
Deep dish pizza from Chicago, remember?
That's
He's
right.
done.
Yeah.
I
apologize.
That killed him.
Slap in the face to anybody from New Haven County.
So who you going for? The guy I didn't mention, Leslie, just to embarrass me some more?
No, I just want to point out,
No, I appreciate
both
that.
being taken away from so that hurts. If it's gonna, for me, I'm biased in this. I will always say this, DeLauro, but it's going to be a very tight race. It's a hard race. I mean, you're seeing her out more. And not saying that she never did before, but I mean, you're seeing her presence more consistently. You're seeing a lot of coalitions, every district that she does, every city that she represents. So she's not taking it for granted, which is great. And she's done a great job representing Connecticut. She's moderate, and I think, and that's really what like to me resonates with her, that she does the work. And the things and the issues that are important, she takes a stand, in the things that she feels like shouldn't. She doesn't worry about it. She's a worker. She's a worker bee. So we'll see where it goes, to be honest.
And I want to apologize. It's Justin Paglino, as everyone pointed out, and it's justinforall.org if you want to learn more about the Green Party candidate, which he's on the Valley Indy in our election previews. So sorry, that was my bad. Jonathan Wharton, who's going to win this race?
I think Justin's probably going to get single digit results. It's not going to be maybe a double digit, but I will say that certainly, Stryker will eat away more and more compared to what Angel attempted to do the last time. Look, I will give the benefit of the doubt to the incumbent, because one thing I know Leslie kind of overlooked, I wouldn't quite call, Rosa DeLauro a centrist or a moderate. She's more of an old school Democrat. I'll call her an established Democrat. She's been around since 1991. People who are the Bernie bros out there. But look, I will say, to point to that, guess what? There's a lot of internal rumbling within the Democratic Party of how many years is too many years. And you all know that a lot of Democrats have been chomping at the bit to see, can there be a real change? Not just with the 3rd district, with Rosa DeLauro's seat, but any of these seats. We forget that Courtney, Larson, they've been in office for years, decades. So at what point are they going to let up? And I don't think they will. That's kind of our Connecticut delegation right now. So it's more of a generational divide among the Democrats. So you can say Republican, Democrat. I think it's a Democrat-Democrat debate that the party needs to figure out one day.
Stefan?
Yeah, this is the first candidate that she's had to run against who's taking it seriously in quite a while. Just so happens that she's a terrible candidate, and Rosa will win, but it's not going to be to the usual 20 points or so. It'll be a little closer, and that'll be mostly because of the Trump town turnouts, I think.
Judy?
I think DeRosa will take it, and I do think it'll be close. Within 10 points, worst case, maybe even a little closer. I would disagree about her qualifications. I think she's an excellent candidate. And Rosa was out of practice. As Leslie said, she is out. I mean, she's out in her district, no question about it. But she didn't have to really fight for I think the lowest she's ever had is 65%. So, yeah. So it's going to be close. Margaret's just getting started, I think. It's getting revved up.
In Rosa's defense, in past years, she's been out in Seymour quite often. I can't speak for other towns, but more often than I would have expected, given how comfortably she usually wins.
I would agree with you. I would piggyback on that and say she's been in when I lived in Ansonia and Derby, she was out there. I don't want to take away from her effort. I'm saying that there's more you're seeing more coalitions and more eagerness to get it out than usual, but her presence has always been shared. I don't know how she does it. I don't like going throughout the district and doing it, and also being a strong advocate out in Washington. She does chair a big committee, so kudos to her for doing what she's doing and still meeting constituents. And I think that's that touch that DeLauro has. She shows that she's a public servant, that she's a leader, and she's a fighter.
Look, that's the bread and butter, you all. You guys know constituent services has been her thing. There's no secret to it.
And that's big. You keep both like that.
Decades. And of course, I won't discount the fact that she's chomping at the bit to become chairwoman of the Appropriations Committee, which is the most powerful committee in the House of Representatives. There's no doubt. So she could bring the bacon home, and she has, at least in the district. But I'm still waiting to see, what does it mean among the Democrats within that caucus? Because we know there are a lot of people who are waiting in the wings, including, by the way, Gary Winfield, among other people. You guys all know that. That's no secret. Doesn't take a Democrat to realize that.
It'll be a
Okay.
very interesting primary when the time comes.
Amen.
Last
Scott,
one.
I love it.
Last one is the big one. U.S. president. I'm just curious. Is it the COVID referendum? Is that what we're going to see? So Trump or Joe Biden? Judy, who's going to win this nationally?
Trump, of course. Trump. Trump.
No doubt in your mind.
No doubt in my mind. He
Leslie?
will take it. And by more than he did in 2016.
Leslie?
Goodness. I will be honest. This is one of those things that I do lose sleep. I think that a lot of his policies have affected a lot of people. Particularly me, I will speak as an immigrant. It affects us a lot. And I think that the positive light about this is that we're seeing a surge of civic engagement of new voters and ones that have really have been taken for granted, that have been disengaged. And I find it really, I was reading something, I find it really interesting how Trump's campaign has been targeting more Black voters, and Biden has been going more for the Latino voters. So it kind of, it's one of those conversations where like, who's gonna, so we'll see. We'll definitely see. I don't have a prediction. I really, really don't. But I definitely see that it's brought a lot of civic engagement, and whatever comes out, we'll see a better reflection of what our nation needs. But I definitely can tell you that our nation is seeking a leader with unity, and that's a big thing. It's lacking, and you can tell, and it's trickling down, like I said, in the municipalities too. So we're feeling more of the direct effect, especially with how COVID was handled.
Jonathan Wharton?
Well, I've been saying to my students over and over again is that it's going to come down to turnout in specific states. We all know this. And so Connecticut shouldn't be a concern, but it should be the other states. And I'm looking more towards Georgia now, obviously Florida, North Carolina. I'm not so really concerned about Ohio and Pennsylvania. So in Texas, it's interesting. So is, Arizona and even Nevada. But I think it's really those 3 or 4 states I just mentioned earlier. I think it's going to come in lawsuits. I think this is going to continue on beyond election night. I think this is going to go on for days, and it's going to be lawsuits and lawyers and more lawyers. It's going to be like a Gore, the Gore versus Bush business all over again. So I wish I could say it could be one over the other, but I think Biden's going to get that. I will put an asterisk behind this. I think you all have heard that the voter turnout, especially among young people, has grown more. In the past, it's been anywhere roving around 40% in a presidential race. Don't ask me about municipal races. You guys all know it's in the teens among people under 30. You all know that. We all follow the stats. Harvard University put together a poll apparently this week that came out that over 60% are planning to turn out who are under 30. That could be tremendous in favor towards Biden, but we don't know how many of those are really maybe even Trump supporters. So I would not discount Trump in terms of getting the younger people to even show up too.
Stefan Bohuniak.
Going up till about a month ago, I thought Trump would win. I thought he would win relatively comfortably. I think by the popular vote, Biden is going to win by 5 to 8 points. I think it's going to be a relative blowout by the popular vote. And I think that in the end, it's going to come down to, either like Michigan or Wisconsin. I think Trump will hold everything from North Carolina down. I think Texas won't be that close. Everybody's saying Texas and Georgia are going to, this is the year we go blue. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Biden holds the Southwest. And I think one of those Midwest states, I think a couple of them are going to go for Biden as opposed to last time around. And then one of them is going to be the tipping point. To the professor's point, it's going to end in lawsuits, and which is ironic because we probably wouldn't have to be dealing with that had Trump just handled his business with COVID and not been a bumbling disaster the entire time. So I think he's going to kind of make his own bed, and hopefully he has to sleep in it. But I would predict Biden by about 10 to 15 electoral points.
All right. That's the broadcast. I want to thank you all so much for coming on. I had a ball doing this. And like I said earlier, I learned a lot because you guys are the experts and I'm just the guy with the website. So hopefully we can do this again. one of these days. But for the Valley Indy, I want to thank Leslie, and I want to thank Jonathan and Judy and Stefan Bohuniak. And that's a wrap, folks.
Thank
you,
you.
Thank you,
Thank
Eugene.
you, everybody else too. Great
Have
talk.
a good one. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Take care.